Hi there, I'm April Callis-Birchmeier. I'm a certified change management professional and project management professional, and I'm here today to talk with you about the digital transformation and change management. Many of our projects that we're working on these days are all around digital transformation, and it's not something that's should be cause for concern for our stakeholders, but many times the idea of a digital transformation gives them a little bit of nerves. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about how we can help stakeholders and how we can help other business owners in our organizations to deal with digital transformations by employing change management tools and techniques and strategies to help them adopt change more easily. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let's just start by talking a little bit about what is a digital transformation. Many times we're putting in an ERP system of some sort, or we're moving from a paper process into something that's automated, or a new storage system, and all of those can be considered digital transformations. And I think it's important just to demystify that terminology, because when we talk about transformation, we're really talking about the goal of organizational change management, right? Where we are helping an organization and individuals move from the current state to the future state. Like, it is important that they are able to go from where they are now to where they need to be in terms of ensuring that they adopt the change that is being implemented and deployed in their organization so that they're able to still serve customers, still help students, still take care of patients, even though we are now using a new method of working and new technology to do the work. So that's where I wanted to begin. And I think one of the key factors, and if you've been following any of my LinkedIn lives for a while, you probably know one of the key factors that I think matters is the story, the relevant and relatable story of the change. When we can describe a transformation with a story that is both bringing in the current state and talking about the benefit of the change, what we're going to gain at the end of this change, we are able to really help people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. I was talking with a group of stakeholders this morning, and they were talking about how important it is. Well, they were project managers, but also stakeholders, and they were talking about the importance of the WIFM, right? Which is what we used to call everyone's favorite radio station, the What's in It for Me. So the WIIFM, what's in it for me is a really important question to answer. And the way we can answer that in a meaningful way for our stakeholders is to answer it with talking about that story of moving from that current state to the future state. So when I'm telling my stakeholders what's in it for them, I have to understand where they're coming from. This is an area of that I just had a conversation about today as well. Is this new? I'll call it new. I think it's relatively new. I feel like there is a new push from implementation groups, from solution companies, from consulting firms, perhaps, to say, don't do the as is mapping. Don't look at what currently exists. You only need to look at the future state, the where we're going, the to be. Don't worry about the as is, just look to the to be. Well, I have to tell you that it doesn't work that way, because without the as is, you are trying to map a journey without a starting point. And when I'm trying to map a journey without a starting point, if I were to put into my GPS my destination and it has no idea where I am, there's no way to map it out for me. And so that's where I'm starting to see some concern, or I'm having concern, because I want to ensure that when we are leading the change effort on a digital transformation that we don't just say, well, the as is on paper and it doesn't matter. The as is has to be included. The as is does not um, hinder us. The as is provides meaning to the to be, to that future state. And it's just like a story, isn't it? You can't just start at the end of the story. You have to start at the beginning. Let's say I were to tell you a story about a little girl who was walking in the woods. She got lost and she saw a house. Now, she didn't know that this house belonged to three bears. And these three bears had been sort of frustrated because they had porridge to eat that morning, but the porridge was very hot. They decided to go out for a walk and to let the porridge cool. And the little girl went into their house and she decided she was hungry and she tasted the porridge. Now, Papa Bear's porridge was too hot and Mama Bear's porridge was too cold, but Baby Bear's porridge was just right, and so she ate it all up. You know this story. And if we didn't have a beginning to this story, the end of the story, she jumps out the window, would make no sense. So if we're telling a story about Goldilocks and the Three Bears, we have to set up the story with the beginning. We have to move into the middle where there's a conflict, there's a problem, and then we have the end. And by eliminating the as is from digital transformations, we are eliminating the beginning of the story. And the end users and stakeholders and customers cannot only live with the end. They need the whole story together. So the relevant, relatable story really matters, particularly in a digital transformation where we're trying to introduce something very new, very different from what currently exists. I think also it's important to recognize that not every objection to a change should be perceived as resistance to the change. There are many objections to change that should be raised and should be explored. And without having this sort of gap analysis that we get from doing our to as is to be mapping, without looking at that gap, it's really tough to see some of those questions and see which questions actually should be causing us to pause and consider what the outcome is going to be. I know that when I'm working on a system implementation where I'm trying to help people adopt a new technology, there's so many factors involved. And I have to say, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, we were spending a lot of time identifying digital prerequisites for employees who were going through a transformation. We were saying, you had to have computer skills, had to be able to type on a keyboard, had to know how to navigate with a mouse. And then if people didn't have that basic level of skills, we would step back and do some remedial computer skills. We called it remediation, computer skill training to ensure that our stakeholders had the skills to be able to be trained to adopt the digital transformation that we were going through. Now, it seems like 15 years later, we're not seeing quite so much of that, but I still think there are pockets, particularly in our organizations, where we do have stakeholders who haven't spent a great deal of time with technology. And you can go a couple of different ways there. You can do remedial training and ensure that they get those skills, that's knowledge and skills and ability to be able to adopt technology. We can also do another approach, and that is that we just help people to find the right role. Like maybe this person isn't going to move along and be a part of this transformation. Maybe they're going to be in an advisory capacity, or maybe they just are at that point in their career where they're deciding whether or not they want to stay involved. I think as we see more and more non-digital natives age out of the employment market, we will see that people have chosen to maybe move in a different direction. But I think our digital natives, such as our millennials and our Gen Z, um, they should all be well versed and well prepared to adopt new technology skills. There shouldn't be any issue for them. So I think that's part of our challenge in digital transformations is just really doing a thorough stakeholder analysis where we truly understand, what's the impact going to be and what do our stakeholders have in terms of their learning completed already and what do they still need. So we do a learning needs assessment to really figure that piece out. And then I think it's really critical, honestly, to create a strong strategy. And when I'm looking at a change management strategy, there's so many pieces involved. I want to start out, though, with looking at resources. I'm always looking at strategically at the resources that we're going to need to be able to adopt this change. So I'm thinking about people, human resources. I'm thinking about information resources, what types of um, information storage systems do we have? What types of, you know, uh, transition information are we going to be able to provide? I think about physical resources. What kinds of training rooms do we have available? Do we have a training environment or training sandbox potentially available for our stakeholders to use? Do we have um, physical resources for people to work differently? Some of the health clinics that I've been working with recently have gone through some really interesting physical changes in the desire to create better care coordination, where they've taken an entire care team, which may be somebody from front desk. You may have clinical providers. You may have behavioral health providers. You may have also dental providers, and then uh, additionally some front or scheduling folks, and you put them together in one room so that they can work together as a care team. Now that's a physical requirement. You have to have a room big enough to accommodate this sort of transformation approach. But I've heard that once those care providers who may or may not be super excited about sharing an office together or a space together, once they're in this co-location, if you will, this very close collaborative space, they love it because it eliminates so many communication barriers. Communication barriers come because we can't find somebody, or we just mean to tell somebody something and we forget, or we can't locate them. But if we're together and we're having continual conversation about our patients and their needs, then it's much simpler to overcome some communication issues that can be a barrier. So when we're thinking about implementing, and we're looking at human resources, physical resources, information resources, and we're also then um, thinking about how can we provide uh, the system, the technology that everybody needs to adopt, and that's our technical resources. And so having this view of the strategy of how we intend to use our resources makes a big difference. The other piece then is moving into our communication strategy. Now, this is where we are really focusing on describing and sharing the story of the change with the stakeholders. And also, this is where we're looking at the various methods that we are going to communicate with all of the different types of stakeholders. Internal stakeholders, such as staff and team members, external stakeholders like our customers, or people who live in the town, other downstream impacts that we might know of, and that we're really focusing on how we're going to communicate to all of these different groups and the types of communication that they may need. If somebody is not going to be directly impacted by the change, they might just need an FYI that something's happening. So it's just, I think that second piece of our strategy really has to be focusing on our communication. Once we've identified that communication strategy, then we're really like looking and honing our sponsorship strategy. So that's where our sponsor, who is our leader, our throat to choke, the person who's accountable for the success of the change, that sponsor is where we need to ensure we have a strategy in place to help that sponsor be effective. Our sponsors many times have great intention and they have the desire to be effective. They don't always have the knowledge of how to be effective or the ability to pull it together. And that's where change management really can step up and help those sponsors, because we know an active and visible sponsor is is a primary indicator of successful change, right? We have to have that. And if we don't have it, we really struggle sometimes. And so I find that pushing, helping, uh, allowing, and encouraging our sponsors to step into a big role with a lot of communication with the team, a lot of communication with stakeholders, with really recognizing and understanding what's at stake in terms of the training that we have to offer, that can guide business process owners as they rework business processes to adapt them to our digital transformation. Those sponsors are just essential, and they need a lot of support to be able to fully step into that role and lead in a very significant way. And then, of course, I think we have to have a stakeholder engagement strategy as well. Stakeholder engagement strategy is really calling out the different stakeholder groups and what they each need to know and how they need to be engaged to ensure that they are ready to go on that change. And when I'm done with my stakeholder engagement strategy, then I'm focusing on the readiness strategy. How can I ensure that the organization is ready to go live? How will I measure that? What will we check on? Do we have a checklist? Do we have an all hands meeting? What do we do to ensure that we're going to be ready? How are we going to, what are some of the measurements we're going to take, the signposts along the way, along this journey that will tell us that we're headed in the right direction? You know, I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I'm always grateful when I see a sign on the highway that tells me how much further to my destination, 17 miles or so. And I think, oh, good, that's so helpful to me. And we need to provide signposts like that to ensure that our organization, our stakeholders, and our technology team, our project team are all ready to go live. And so that's part of that readiness strategy. Then, of course, we want to think about measuring the benefit realization. How are we going to measure how we're doing in terms of achieving the benefit of this change? And if I haven't said it already, I'm going to say it right now. We have to have a benefit for a change. If we don't have a benefit, I don't know why we're changing. There must be a benefit to a change. Now, sometimes people say, well, there's not really a benefit. Like, we're going to be out of support if we don't make this change, if we don't upgrade to a different system. And I understand being out of support is a valid reason for change. But we have to find something else that's more compelling and interesting, that's actually a benefit to the stakeholders, a benefit to the organization that people can rally around. Because if we can't find any reason other than we're required for support to make this change, it's really tough to engage people. That story is meaningless to them. There's no WIFM. There's nothing that's in it for them. There's no why to the change. So we must find that benefit and describe that benefit. And then once I've got all of my strategies in place and I'm thinking through, how I plan to sustain this change in terms of strategy, how will we continue the work that's being done as a project into the future? And I build a sustainability strategy to support that work when it moves from the project status into operations. When I have all these pieces in place, then I can start to plan. I can start to put some dates and some actions together so that I'm able to kind of back things up and say, if this has to happen by this date, here's where I need to begin. And here are the milestones that we need to manage to ensure that we're making progress, we're moving forward, and we're helping our stakeholders and our customers and all of those who are involved in the change navigate to that future state. And in a digital transformation, many times it's navigating into a new system or a new process within a system. So I think that's important. We want to also know, how are we going to measure how we did? And there are some easy measurements and there's some more difficult measurements. And I think if we don't have any plan on how we're going to measure, we won't. We will be busy. We'll get busy. Everybody will be working as quickly as possible to make it to go live. So the planning, in that planning phase, I think taking the time to plan the measurement piece is very, very important, so that I know when I'm going to be doing a survey or a focus group or having some sort of input from the project team, the stakeholder group, the sponsors, our customers perhaps, so that I have a sense of where we are on this journey, on this map to the change. I think that many times organizations will adopt a digital change without any sort of change management. And if you are in one of those groups, it's really stressful for our stakeholders. It's very frustrating too, to not have any real information about what to do differently in order to use a new tool, a new system, or a new process. And taking the time and putting the effort in to develop change management tools and technologies and strategies and plans, and to then use those to help people move from that current state to the future state, I think is just essential. And I want to encourage you that when you have a digital transformation ahead, and your organization says, we're just going to put this in and everybody's just going to have to adjust, taking the time to really think about how much you can save in terms of stakeholder frustration, how you could really increase retention, reduce attrition, and ensure that your customers are aware, so that you're not losing what's most important, which is, your base of operations, I think is incredibly important. And so using change management to help with that digital transformation is essential. I've been on a lot of transformations, some completely process and, the way we do business, the way of working, some that are completely technology based. Most of the transformations I've been involved with have included change management. That's why I've been involved with them. But I think that if you have questions and you wonder how to lead people through this change process, how to help them through this journey so that they're able to make it to the future state more quickly, with less pain, less struggle, less frustration, and be able to adopt that change more easily, and then even better, to see the benefits of that change more easily, more quickly, I think that is certainly worth doing, because those who are in organizations going through digital transformation, who have organizational change management support, absolutely have a loyalty and a respect and an appreciation for their workplace. And job market is tight right now. It's important to protect our people and to help them manage to adopt change and to make it through the change process successfully. So if you have questions about it, I'd love to talk to you about it. Please reach out to me. You can reach me at april@springboard-consult.com. You can visit our springboard-consult.com website. You can join our training. You can become a certified change management professional, or maybe you're just want to have a conversation. I'd love to talk with you. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have a digital transformation coming up, if you have a major transformation of some sort on the horizon. I'd love to strategize with you, plan with you, and think through all of the changes that can be impacted, and you can address the stakeholders' needs and make sure that that change is successful, not only for the stakeholders, not only for your organization, but for yourself as well, because there's nothing like having a very successful, well done change versus a chaotic transformation that leaves people frustrated, and kind of gives everybody a terrible taste about change in their environment. So please feel free to contact me by email. You can go on our website and fill out a contact form. We have a lot of tools on the website you're free to go download and take a look at. And I appreciate your being with me on LinkedIn Live tonight. And I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Thank you.